I know how to work a mic. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone showing up. Can we get a little bit more light on the stage, Martin?
It's a golf club.
I know. All right. The only. Oh well. I'll sort it out, I guess.
Put it on the table, it'll help.
Yeah, that'll have to work for now. Everyone, the captain.
I have bad eyesight.
All right. So Ed, of course, was born October 9th, 1974, and he made it 51 years. And as a kid, he was described as stellar and a practical jokester, smart and thoughtful, with courage and fortitude and he would stick to his guns regardless of what people thought. And I'm sure some of you experienced that. And even as a kid, he never questioned himself. When he was either 3 or 4 years old, he basically saw Star Wars with his mom for the first time, and he absolutely fell in love with it. He told his mom that he was Luke Skywalker and that she was Princess Leia, and she ended up taking him to the theater to see this like 5 times as a kid. And as a kid, he'd often bang himself up skateboarding, something that he took up, a couple years ago, where he started going back to skate parks. But for about 4 to 5 years, and this drove his mom crazy, usually on the first day of his summer vacation, he would end up in the hospital banged up. According to his mom, he just couldn't wait till the second day. So it just drove her nuts. And we all know he loved computers. And his first computer was actually a TRS-80. So for those of you that are more geeky, you'll get that. And not only was it a TRS-80, but apparently it was modified with some sort of board that was wrapped in tin foil in the back. Very secondhand type of computer. And going along with his love of practical jokes when he was younger, he had an experience where his class had like 600 people in the class, and the class was so big that they couldn't just take one photo of the class at the time. So they had to do this panoramic type photo, right? So Ed gets it in his head, he's gonna show up in this photo multiple times. So in his senior class photo with 600 people, Ed is actually in there 4 different times, right? So, and of course, he loved nature, he loved rock collecting, he loved his arrowheads, and more recently he got into, carving his own bowls and things like that. And funny note there, when I lived up on Colleen, I had I basically lived right next to what was 250 million years ago, an ocean. And so just like not even half a block's walk from my house, the entire area was covered in fossils. And I kept telling him, dude, you gotta get up here, There's all these fossils, and you'll love it. And he's like, no, I can't get up there, Well, I finally leave Colleen, and Ankh gets him up to my old house, and he ends up leaving the field with like 5 bags of fossils. And he's like, I can't believe these are all here. And Ankh was like, yeah, Eugene kept trying to get you to come up and visit him. And when I met Ed, and I would see this a lot, right? But when I met him, he'd be in his cargo shorts, and he'd always have a sci-fi book in his pocket, just like this, right? And this, with meeting him, it reminded me of in the 60s, there was always that group of people that always ran around with a copy of The Hobbit, And so that's what I thought about when I saw Ed, always running around with a book. And this is a book that he actually bought for me years ago called The Force of Star Wars. and it basically extrapolates a bunch of Christian principles out, from the movies. It's pretty interesting. But I remember and I would buy books for him, and the last book that I got for him was actually The Brass Armadillo in Omaha, Nebraska, because we loved classic sci-fi, and he loved the covers. Like I remember I gave him a collection of Edgar Rice Burroughs books with the old Mars covers, and he just thought were fantastic. And it was this love of science fiction that really brought us together, and we initially bonded over that. And I'd like to think that we were fast friends. And Ed didn't live far from me, so we got together outside of the club pretty often. We would get together at like Cafe Java, which was like my kind of de facto hangout, and we would just meet for pie. And or we'd go to, if it was later on in the evening, we would meet at IHOP. And since IHOP doesn't close, we would be there for just hours, just talking about science fiction, fantasy, and of course music, like non-stop music. And something that I always thought was hilarious about Ed was I would always check to see if something had whipped cream on it, and then ask for it not to have whipped cream. So I'd say, hey, does that pie have whipped cream, or does that milkshake have whipped cream? And, they would say, yeah. I'm like, well, can I get it without? And then Ed would always say, I want his whipped cream, right? So you'll see a couple photos where he's eating pie, but you don't see the pie because it's literally covered in whipped cream, right? And sometimes, like if it was a milkshake, they would literally just bring him a plate with my whipped cream on it, right? But he hated cilantro. Like nobody's business. Ed was a really great conversationalist. I could spend a lot of time, talking about whatever with him. And basically, I've got a lot of friends that come to visit me in Austin, because Austin is kind of like that tourist kind of destinational place, And I always had like this short list of people that I would call. So it would be Ed, and he would usually have Sarah with him, and then there would be Ankh, and then there would be Jürgen. And basically whenever someone came into town, I'd arrange to have dinner, and I'd always try and get one of them at the dinner. And I had a lot of family that were really worried about me, friends were worried about me, because the closest ones that I would have would be like 1,000 miles away. And usually after we'd have, dinner, with those people, they would always be less worried about me, right? And more recently, in the last couple of years, with Sarah's passing, of course, I've drafted Ben and Reagan into those roles. So, sorry, Jürgen, you're going to have to step it up on those dinners. All right, so we all have memories of Ed. And, as John said, I'm sure you've got, some really special ones. But for me, it's really hard to pin down what my favorite memories are. But I do have a few that just come to mind. When we were DJing, we had a regular night here called Yacht Club that went for a while. That was a lot of fun. We also ran a Taco Tuesday that went for years and years and years. That was awesome. We probably had about 10 or 15 people that regularly showed up for that. We would also do a regular Elysium movie night where we'd get a bunch of people from Elysium together, and we'd all go see, whatever the new science fiction movie was, like Alien or something like that. And we would do a lot of DJing together. So Ed and I would often DJ these unofficial after parties, right? So like if Garbage or Echo and the Bunnymen or something like that was like playing Stubbs or somewhere, we would have an unofficial after party. And we probably did a dozen of those. But the DJ nights that I did with him that are special to me were we would do these nights on Thanksgiving, and we do them on Christmas Eve. And we did those for years until those holidays actually ended up like on a Sunday, and we all know that that's no man's land, right? You don't mess with Sundays. So we had a span of 5 years where we did it. And it was always a lot of fun. But I do remember specifically a DJ night we did for Halloween. And we decided that we were going to get a bunch of pumpkins and try and get people to wrestle in the pumpkin seeds. So we got the plastic wrap, and I went out and bought about 30 pumpkins, and then we all carved our pumpkins, but we kept all the innards to the pumpkins. And then at the end of the night, they closed all the shades so that you couldn't see inside the club, and they closed the front door so no one could get in, and then we commenced to having a pumpkin wrestling show. And that was a lot of fun. And Ashley, if you're watching this on YouTube or whatever, great job. So over the last couple of years, starting with the passing of his wife Sarah, Ed really struggled a lot. And for those of you that were close to him, you definitely felt those reverberations, and you definitely knew that something, was going on with him. And, life really kind of threw him a curveball, because, shortly after, Sarah passed, Ed got diagnosed with cancer, and then he beat cancer, and then he had to go through this horrible, horrible ordeal of withdrawal from all of the cancer pain medications. And he really struggled with that. And then while he was struggling with that, he got hit with cancer 2.0, and it came back. So it was just non-stop struggle for him, for the last couple of years there. And it's in those quiet hours, with him, that I saw the fortitude and strength of his character and his will to fight and just keep going. He just wouldn't stop fighting until basically a few hours before he passed away. And and it's those raw, those unabridged moments where I saw his character and what defined him as my friend, and I miss him.